Very,
Okay.
very elegant. Yep.
Okay, so this is much better.
Much better. So
Yeah,
stay
because
there.
I will. And I'm doing a national TV thing tomorrow, which is what motivated me.
Well, don't go over there then. Please stay where you are.
I will.
Yeah. All right. Welcome everyone to Assisi's Education. And today's subject is dog love. COVID-19, stay-at-home orders, but what's next? Separation distress. Our presenter today is Steve Dale. Steve is a certified animal behavior consultant who's been a trusted voice in the world of pet health for over 20 years. You have likely heard him on the radio hosting 2 of his nationally syndicated radio shows, and I have certainly read him in many pet articles and magazines and been frequently guided by him. Frankly, Steve has won awards in just about everything he's done, but one that stands out to me is the AVMA Humane Award, and perhaps the upcoming most distinguished award, which is or was to be awarded in August, where he is awarded AVMA's Award for Excellence in Media. We welcome Steve.
Thank you very much. I don't know how they're going to give me that award if there's no AVMA convention, and that would be unfortunate for many reasons, well above and beyond my award. But AVMA is located just outside Chicago, so maybe we'll just meet on a bus or something, and they'll hand it off to me while we ride the bus downtown.
Could happen.
Yes, that's possible. So I thought of the idea for this talk when it occurred to me, and then as I spoke to other experts, I found out the folks were saying, yeah, Steve, I hadn't thought about it, but I agree. When all of this is over and our life gets back to, or begins, whatever the new normal is, we are likely to see more separation anxiety in our dogs. And it falls in one of 3 buckets. These are dogs who previously suffered separation anxiety, even if that dog was treated. Now you are home all the time. The dog has not had the opportunity to be home alone. Shelter and rescue dogs. So the great thing is, and it's wonderful, and I understand there are many shelter and rescue people on this call. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work you do. That is inadequate even. I don't even know the right words, because you're continuing to work through all this. Many of you, or even volunteer through all this. Those of you who have rescued or adopted dogs, how wonderful is that? But these dogs, in some cases, someone has been there with the dog 24/7, and the dog has literally not had the opportunity to be home alone. So that's one thing. And then the other is for dogs, particularly those who have been, sadly, rehomed several times, there's data to demonstrate they are more likely to have separation distress. And then the third bucket is a bucket that would include all of us. So when this began to happen, people were, and they still are, on edge for a whole lot of different reasons. But one of those reasons, just simply a change in routine. At least we had an explanation for what that change in routine was. We didn't like it, we don't like it, but there's an explanation. The dogs, no one is sending an email to. No one is saying, here's why everyone is now gonna leave the house and go back to work. Kids are gonna go to their activities, whatever they may be, and you're gonna be left home alone like you used to be left home alone, but the dogs are dogs and they don't remember necessarily what it used to be. Now, some dogs, many dogs, maybe most dogs will adjust to change just fine. But I know there are a mysterious percent, whatever that percent turns out to be, that won't adjust to change all that well. So my first rule, and you're going to hear me say this over and over, is it's important to be proactive. And here are some things you can do right now. Go away, leave the house. And do so without the dog. I know that's heartbreaking, and that is on many levels fundamentally wrong. How can you not take a walk with the dog? You know, it reminds me of that cartoon that I've seen, or versions of it several different times. The dog is like hiding now behind a sofa because the pet parent is coming with a leash saying, let's go for another walk. And the little bubble above the dog is saying, this is my 38th walk today, and it's 12 noon. So yes, it is hard to go out without the dog, but I suggest take all family members with you and actually go for a walk and leave the dog and see how the dog will do. Lots of reasons to do this, to support the dog's independence, to, in a sense, tell the dog what you're going to be doing, and to determine if there's an issue. Easy to determine if there's an issue if you have a camera set up. I can give you hints and tips about other ways to do it, but having a camera set up using today's technology, and there are cameras, I checked on Amazon, you can get one single camera, you don't have to get a fancy thing, that is pointed at the door you leave from, for 38 bucks. You know, and there are lots of other choices too. I think it's worth that investment for all sorts of reasons, but this is certainly one reason. If you have a food motivated dog and you leave treats stuffed in toys, then there is little doubt that dog, if that dog is not anxious, is going to forget about them. I'm just going to get the treats. One little trick is to put the stuffed Kong or whatever toy you use, or whatever, it could be a sterilized bone stuffed with low-fat peanut butter, low-salt peanut butter. Be careful, no xylitol, please. That's an artificial sweetener that can make dogs really incredibly sick. We don't want you going to the emergency room. But whatever the dog really, really likes, leave it up on a counter. Make it so the dog can't literally jump up there. If you have a St. Bernard, you want to have this really high up there. A Chihuahua, maybe not as high up, because we want the dog to see and smell, to know that it's up there. So instead of the dog pacing back and forth or drooling because the dog understands the cue that you're leaving the house, maybe the dog will be focused on that food and not so concerned about you leaving. 10 seconds or 30 seconds before you leave, put the treat down on the ground, ask your dog to sit, say free, go ahead, or whatever your cue word is. The dog is chomping on that as you leave the house. So what is separation anxiety? Sometimes it's not what you think it is. So the dog that is barking when you're not there is not always in despair. And I'll talk about that. So some dogs, it's self-reinforcing for dogs to bark, especially if they happen to be of the terrier variety. But for many dogs, it's just and I'm going to get in trouble with the terrier people now, right? It's self-reinforcing for dogs to bark. And someone's walking by, postman is walking by, UPS guy is walking by, or a UPS gal is walking by, and the dog barks. That can simply be fun to do. It can be an outlet for boredom for some dogs. It doesn't necessarily mean the dog is anxious at all. Even a dog ripping up pillows, like you see the dog, the bottom picture there, that dog actually looks like, I am having the time of my life. Dog could have never have been taught to be left home alone, or for a young dog taken out of a crate way too early and the dog gets into trouble. But it's not separation anxiety necessarily.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt your flow. Were you sharing slides just because we can't see them yet?
What? Oh my gosh.
Keep talking. It's very educational, but no
yes.
slides.
Well, that's not helpful, and I have no idea what went on, because did you see him at the beginning?
No.
Oh, I wish you would have told me. Okay. Let me try this again. I have no idea what's going on.
Now we see your computer. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a good sign. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, I wish you would have told me. Okay, you seeing
we
that?
didn't know the
Sorry, I thought
direction
maybe you were
were
doing
going.
an intro or the first part without the slides or something.
Oh my gosh.
Our
Okay.
bad.
I apologize to everybody. I had no idea. This is technology, good, bad, and otherwise. So I'm sorry about that. Those are the three buckets I'm talking about. There is a dog with a bucket. Be proactive. Yes, getting ahead of it. So I didn't get that far. So thank you for interrupting me. So when I said the dog at the bottom, most of you can look at that dog and say, that dog doesn't look distressed. In fact, that dog was probably having a good time ripping up those pillows. So the dog in the upper image, that dog is howling, saying, where the heck is everybody? The ears are way back. We could see the part of the rest of the dog's body if my image and the CC image weren't there. The point is that dog is stressed. Take my word for it, that dog is stressed. My point that I want to make, though, is that not all dogs that wreak havoc when you're not there or bark and the neighbors are complaining about the barking, It's not necessarily separation distress at all. And hopefully that came through. So how do you know if it's separation distress? So I love these images. Thank you, CC, for providing these. And these are just some of the common signs of separation anxiety. I'm not going to go through all these. You could see them, and most of you know the obvious ones. So depending on how anxious the dog is, that dog might truly try to escape. And I've not had this happen, but I've had colleagues where dogs have actually broken windows jumping out. I mean, that's how bad it can get. So we can do something about it. But what we've been able to do in the past hasn't been enough, clearly. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about it, right? So, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So how do we identify separation anxiety? Well, I talked about what's not, but what is separation anxiety? So we saw those images. Also, there's a great interactive quiz that CC has on their site, and there's a link to it there. But there is no validated true evaluation for it. It is a veterinary behaviorist or a certified animal behavior consultant such as myself, ideally looking at video of that dog and saying, that dog is having a great time ripping up those pillows, or that dog is really anxious. That's really the best we can kind of do. But I love this little, it's not validated yet, but something like it can be and should be soon. I talked about using a camera. So use a wide angle camera, that's best. A videotape for 20 minutes, usually, not always, but usually, it's the first 20 minutes or so after the family departs that there's going to be a problem. And of course, good lighting is essential so you can see what you're seeing when you see the video back. So I took this little quiz, and that's my dog Hazel there. And the result is that my dog did have, and I knew this, some separation anxiety. So what do you do about it? That's why we're here, right? So yes, there's a program to eradicate the cues, and that's a good thing. That's always a good thing. So when you grab your wallet and grab your shoes and grab your coat, your dog knows you're going, and I bet your dog knows you're going well before that. Sometimes people report, in fact, frequently, they report that just like some of you who may have arthritis can tell me when the weather's going to change like a day in advance, these dogs can tell hours in advance. So I get off the phone with my buddy. I say, I'm going to meet you in 20 minutes. I'm not going to leave the house for 10 minutes because I know he lives nearby. Our dog gets anxious even at that point. How does the dog know? We don't even know how these dogs pick up on all of these cues, but they sure as heck do. And trying to eradicate them can be somewhat successful. It's difficult to be completely successful. It's something I still encourage. Behavior modification is always a good thing if it's done in a fear-free way, if it's done with positive reinforcement, but that's not going to, in of itself, for most dogs, solve the problem. You can encourage independence, again, still a good thing. So teach that dog that you have, your newly adopted dog perhaps, or when you adopt out dogs, for those of you that participate and work at shelters as shelter professionals, again, thank you for doing that. But you can tell the folks, adoption counselors, train your dog to have sit stays in the other room, not the room you're in, for 10 seconds at first. Then you can call the dog, good practice at teaching the dog to come when you call, and then 20 seconds, then a minute, then, you know, teaching independence is a good thing for dogs. Also giving them a toy, something, again, with treats stuffed inside or a food puzzle in the other room. And they bring it back to you, bring it back to the other room. And they only get to work on it when they're in another room. Again, encouraging independence. Bless you. There's the thing called graduated departures that people like me talk about. So that is, going out to the mailbox and leaving the dog. If my mailbox is at the end of the driveway, I'm gone for what, 30 seconds? Less if I'm a fast walker. And see how the dog does. If the dog does okay, then increase the time by 10 more seconds. Then maybe drive around the block. Then maybe run a quick errand, you know, and you change it up. So you're gone for 20 seconds, you're gone for a minute, you're gone for 20 seconds, you're gone for 3 minutes, you're gone for a minute. You get the idea. sometimes more time, sometimes less time. The dog never knows. This can be helpful. Again, a dog with serious separation distress is not going to be helped by that a lot, in my experience. But certainly, if you want to try it, there's no downside to trying it. And again, it can be helpful. So all of these things that I'm mentioning can be helpful. What's going to help one dog? We don't have data as to why some dogs are helped by, for instance, graduated departures and dogs aren't. We do believe to some extent, it's the extent that they're distressed by you leaving. Some dogs have more serious or more profound, better way to put it, separation anxiety than other dogs, but still, we don't know all we want to know about. I wish we did. But we know this, there are tools you can use today that we didn't have around. So if I was giving this talk 10 years ago, I don't think there's anything on this list. I could have talked about maybe some psychopharmacological solutions. Let me start at the top. That's a pheromone. It's called Adaptil. It's a copy of the pheromone when mother dogs, can I say bitches, nurse their puppies. They have in that milk a pheromone that helps to calm them. Adaptil is a copy of that pheromone. I started a few of these, including calming care, because it's a newer product. So some of you may not have heard about it. It's from Purina, and it's fascinating science, like the science I'm about to give you in a moment. It's a probiotic, and we know that our gut talks to our brain, and the Nestle part of Purina, the human part, created this for humans. It's in the process, I understand, of being considered for humans. That takes a while. So let's do it for dogs. They got some science out there, and the science is great. And it's the buzz of veterinary conferences. Back in the day when I went to veterinary conferences a few months ago, everyone was talking about calming care. There are products you can put around your dog, like the Thunder Shirt, Anxiety Wrap, or Storm Defender. Storm Defender makes your dog look like a superhero. Thunder Shirt and Anxiety Wrap kind of provide a swaddling, I believe, for the animal. They were really created for thunderstorms, but what we know is that dogs that are anxious about one thing are likely to be anxious about others. And this does help a lot of dogs with separation anxiety. Thunder Ease is simply the Thunder Shirt with Adaptil in it. So I like saving money, and that's a twofer. Zentrol and Zilkene and Zilkene's a newer one, are nutraceuticals. There's not nutritional supplements, not pharmacological products, but sort of a hybrid in between. For any of these things, I think talking to your veterinarian is a good idea because you don't want to make these adjustments. And I would never, ever encourage you. In fact, at the very start, my mantra is show your veterinarian the video if you can. Telemedicine now is catching on anyway, but email a video to your veterinarian and say, do you think this is separation anxiety? Now, there may be some professional dog trainers watching this, professional behavior consultants. Of course, you don't need to do that necessarily for a client, but sometimes even there could be something medical going on that's contributing to all of this that I'm talking about as well. And I think that's very important. Zilkene, that's what grandma told you when she said, having trouble sleeping at night, have a warm glass of milk. And it helps actually to take off or ease anxiety just a bit. And it's a fairly new product, which is why I have the little asterisk by it. I should have had by CBD an asterisk as well, because CBD is something people are asking me about more than anything else. There is anecdotal evidence that it can help. My issue is there's no scientific evidence yet. I believe there probably will be, but there isn't yet. Also, not all CBD products are the same. There are a handful at the moment that are looking at hard science, and those are the ones I'm a fan of. But nevertheless, until there's hard science, talk to your veterinarian about that. Maybe there is no downside, but again, CBD products, if we had 10 here and I could line them all up and show them to you, they are not all the same quality. And then there is the drugs, psychopharmacological intervention. I listed fluoxetine or Prozac. and clomipramine here because they are the ones that are approved for separation anxiety. But veterinarians and veterinary behaviorists have more in their back pocket by far that they can use. A lot of people say, I just don't want to drug my dog. You're not going to change your dog's personality given the right dose. And certainly this can work. Is it always necessary? It's not. And that's the good thing. We don't want to give our dog drugs if we don't, or cat or ourselves, drugs if we don't have to, right? This is an important issue. And I argue even more important at this point in time, exact point in time. It's an important issue, and it has been, because separation anxiety, and those of you who work or volunteer at shelters know, has been a huge factor in explanation for relinquishment of dogs for many years now. And I would argue another conversation, and you could ask me about it afterwards, I have opinions about it, as to why we're actually seeing more separation anxiety today than, say, 15 years ago, which means there are more dogs being given up to shelters and rescues because of it. We can intervene. We can help these dogs. The other matter is the dog's quality of life. Obviously, these dogs are in distress, and in distress isn't a strong enough way to put it. These dogs are panicked. They're terrified. Upset, that's not a strong enough word either. We don't want our dogs to feel that way, of course, the human-animal bond being what it is. And we can do something about it. We can do far more about it today than, as I said, just some number of years ago. And when I heard about the Calmer canine and targeted pulsed electromagnetic field, I thought, oh my gosh, I've really got to investigate what this is about. So this uses, unlike pharmacological intervention that is a biologic, this uses what ultimately we could call physics. And what happens in these dogs, and we know this, is the hormones like serotonin and dopamine decrease when these dogs are as anxious as they are. They are so, again, this is not a strong enough word. They are so upset. And we don't even know the depth of that emotion. So let me back up a couple steps. It has been shown, and if I were giving this talk 30 years ago, I might have been blasted for using the word emotion and dog in the same sentence. Or cat, I suppose, or pet parrot, or even ferret. But we know today that these animals do have emotions. And when we're talking about dogs, they're really incredibly similar to our own. And we have science to demonstrate that a calm dog's brain, particularly in the amygdala, looks so different than a dog that is anxious or a dog that is suffering from fear, anxiety, or stress. Fear Free has done some research on this, but before Fear Free has, I went to talks by a guru, veterinary behaviorist Karen Overall, who taught me about brain chemistry. And we know that's the case. So if we can change that to what a normal brain or amygdala, particular part of that brain, should look like, why wouldn't we do that? And that's what this product does. So it's simple, but it's not so simple to explain. So how is it used? It looks like a little halo, and I like using that expression because that means our dogs are all angels. And you know, there is a thinking out there, and again, for those of you who work at shelters, you can confirm this, that people think their dog is being a bad dog. And of course, their dog is not being a bad dog. Their dog is suffering from severe, often, anxiety. Not doing it on purpose. It's not doing, the dog isn't doing this to get back at us in any way. The dog is doing this because this is the only way the dogs can cope with their extreme, in some cases, many cases, anxiety. So this particular dog, very cute dog, is wearing a vest that you can attach this halo to, or you could watch TV and just hold it over the dog's head for 15 minutes twice a day. The course of treatment is 4 to 6 weeks. It may take longer in that there may be subsequent courses of treatment necessary or not. Depends on the individual dog. The effects of the calmer canine in reducing the signs of separation anxiety has been looked at. And statistically, there has been, and there is a significant reduction, statistically, in signs of canine separation anxiety. All dogs showed improvement, ranging from a resolution of 50% to a measurable improvement in one or more signs of separation anxiety. The effects in 2/3 of the dogs. And a question asked to me a lot, well, what are the side effects? Zero, there aren't any, at least none that are known. And, you know, that's a good thing. So here is a beagle doing what beagles do, howling, but this beagle continues to howl. You will notice there are little objects here. Those are toys with treats in them. And the beagle is saying, I really don't care about that. I'm missing my family. That's Elliot. That's the beagle's name. And now the anxiety actually gets worse. So in some dogs over time, it gets better. In some dogs, it worsens, and then this happens. So what if the dog ingested some of this? Then we have an obstruction. And there are many videos like this that I happen to see. And they're all the same. It's a before and after, and the before is so dramatically different. So before, the dog hardly rested. 1 month after, the dog was resting 80% of the time. That number might have been higher if it wasn't a beagle, but the beagle wasn't showing anxiety signs, and very little whining or howling. Again, it's a beagle. So there was some howling. And these are numbers that are higher 1 month after than what is typical, actually. And that improvement is enormous, not only for the quality of life of our dogs, the quality of life of neighbors, and for our sort of well-being. We don't want our dogs to be suffering. People who have dogs with separation anxiety sometimes don't even want to leave the house themselves, or cringe at the notion of leaving the house. And it makes us anxious too. And these dogs are little angels, as you see, wearing the halo. Here's some information where you can go for further resources. International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior, and the diplomates of the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists. Incidentally, exciting news, there was a book that I participated in, it was my idea really, called Decoding Your Dog. And it was authored by, I co-edited the book, but authored by American College of Veterinary Behaviorists. I certainly recommend that book. And now you have time to read, right? Well, there's a book called Decoding Your Cat that's available now on pre-order. Cats don't have as much anxiety issues. This product is labeled for dogs, but incidentally, separation anxiety can occur in cats. I hope you like me on Facebook and find me through my various social media. There's Decoding Your Cat, by the way. And that is my website, where I do have a story about all this, where I go into, in some cases, more detail, because in print I can do that, than what I was about to deliver. Also in print, I could provide links, which I did. And wow. Now, oh yeah, because that slide is not on this computer. So
Julie, can you pop the slide up?
She will pop a slide up, and I ended, I think, even 1 minute early. So
you're awesome. There you go.
But I do apologize for the glitch of, for whatever reason, Zoom didn't share at first. I'm glad it worked the second time around. And I am certainly happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
Okay, I see questions coming in. So question number 1, for the study, was there any work done around the placebo effect for this? Owners' stress levels can impact the dog. Owners creating a separation anxiety problem. I can answer that if you'd like to.
I think that I'd love to hear the answer from you.
Okay,
and I think that's such a brilliant question, by the way.
It is a wonderful question,
yeah.
and one that I'm glad was asked, because the answer is good. So in order to avoid the placebo effect, while it's acknowledged that we are treating the animal, you know, while sitting next to them, you don't see us anywhere in sight through any of those videos that are hour after hour after hour of that dog in his life without its owner. And that was purposely placed that way. So there would be less, if practically no, placebo effect.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. I do believe that placebo may play some role in any of those products, even the psychopharmacological products, and we could actually see the brain chemistry change. Even there may be some placebo effect. But you know what? If there's an effect, I don't care what it is if we're helping the dog. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. But
Right.
what I am saying is that I don't even care as long as we help the dog, even if there is some placebo effect there. But this is hard science, and they did measure for that. You explained it.
They did. And another question. How in a shelter situation would you pre-assume before you handed over an animal?
Pre-assume that the dog has separation anxiety? I'm
I'm
not sure what you're
assuming
asking.
that's yes. Well, I bet I know what they're asking. So these dogs are in the shelter. Someone comes to adopt, and hopefully the attendants in the shelter have noticed that it's an anxious dog and possibly had an opportunity to treat it for that before handing it over.
Yeah,
Hard question. Hard question.
yeah, I can answer that a bit, which is ultimately going to be a non-answer, but I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
Because, in a shelter environment, we could test dogs for some things, and we could do better at some things than others, and some shelters are better at doing it than others. So I'll back up and explain what I mean. So I want that dog right over there. And I explained that I have 17 cats at home. So I want that dog to be cat friendly. And you've already tested that dog to determine if that dog is cat friendly. So that is something that can be done in a shelter. Now, for those of you that work and volunteer at shelters, you may be aware that some shelters do a better job of that than others. So still, that's something that can be done. Dogs that are put in a shelter environment have, by the very nature of where they are, been separated from their family for whatever the reason. Now, does that mean that dog is going to have separation anxiety when that dog goes into the new home? There is some data to suggest the following. The dogs that have been relinquished multiple times are more likely to have separation anxiety. There's other data to suggest that all shelter dogs are likely or more likely than the general public dogs to have separation anxiety. There's other data to suggest that data is not right, that the dogs may have been given up because they have separation anxiety that was never really addressed. So when they're adopted, of course they're going to have separation anxiety. How do you tease out what is right in all of that and what isn't? I don't know. I do know the following, that any dog that is rehomed, it's a possibility. So what I would do is I would give stories like the one I wrote, but whatever tool you want to use, a CC Animal Health's website, information from the CC, and say, you know what, this is a possibility. And if you can, finances are an issue now more than ever for people, but if you can, spend the $40 or less or more on a camera system, and a lot of people have them already for a lot of different reasons. But if you can, to determine what's going on when you leave the house for just 5 minutes the first time you leave, or less the first time you leave the house.
Okay, I see another question here that we'd like to get in. For the
Sure.
past 3 days, when I go upstairs and close the dog gate, leaving her downstairs, my dog will pee right in front of the gate. She never does things like this. Is this separation anxiety, or is she protesting?
Well, I don't think she's one of those protesters out on the street saying we need to get back to work sooner. In fact, she would be saying the reverse, right? She's
Right.
saying, stay home. I want you home. I don't know the answer to that. So assuming nothing is medically going on with your dog, and assuming this is not some weird attention-seeking behavior, which is possible, that unlikely, but possible, then I would say yes. If you're not within the view for sure, and even if you are, by putting up that gate, also if that gate is new, I don't know if I'd call it separation anxiety, I'd call it a dog not being able to deal with this new gate. If the gate had always been there and the dog is now doing this, and this is a new behavior, assuming nothing medical is going on, and assuming it's not the strange attention-seeking behavior that's unlikely but possible, yes, could be separation anxiety or the start of what you're going to see. And I love this question because this is the time. Yeah, this is, I mean, you tell me what you think, but this right now, this moment, when I am done, is the time to begin to deal with this and begin to do some of what I said in the past 30 minutes and take some of those bullet points, whatever you think will work for your home, and begin to do those things.
She is replying to you that the gate has always been there.
Yeah, then I'm saying, assuming nothing medical is going on, assuming the dog didn't really have to go to the bathroom and you didn't know it because you let the dog out and the dog didn't pee and you didn't know it, assuming it's a house-trained dog, assuming when the dog peed the first time, you didn't jump up and down and scream at the dog. Dogs will even do things for negative attention at times. Again, that last one's somewhat unlikely, even if you did scream at the dog. Then I would say, yes, we're seeing the beginning of separation anxiety. And the good news is you're catching it early.
Okay, let me look and see if this is another question.
Or is it someone hollering at me?
No, well, I'm not seeing that hideous electronic hand waving at me, so I guess you're okay.
Okay.
Anyway, Steve, I appreciate the time you spent with us. It's really timely and important information. I'm a dog owner and I am usually on the road. So I'm looking at my not normally anxious dog and saying to him, don't pull anything here. So,
well, that's right. I mean, what you said is so true because our lifestyles have all changed, or at least for most of us, we're there all the time now. And our dogs are saying, great. But then when we're not there all the time, they're going to say, what the heck? And I really think, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're going to see a huge surge in separation anxiety. That's the bad news. The good news for people watching webinars like I'm giving, I know you have a couple coming up. Dr. Ward, Dr. Nickel, I think are giving some.
correct.
And folks tune into those. They're great people who know their stuff for sure. And they'll be saying, I suspect, the same types of things that I will. But unless you start now and understand what you could be dealing with, you could have a real problem on your hands. And some of those dogs, especially the foster dogs or the newly adopted dogs, especially, I'm concerned may be relinquished. The one other quick concern I have is that for people unable to pay their rent, landlords may actually look for excuses. So if the dog is barking when you're not there, that landlord may be more quick to say, get out of here, or at least get the dog out, than the landlord may otherwise be.
Okay, thank you. I will answer the last question because it's administrative. There's a question as to whether they are getting a copy of the PowerPoint, and indeed you will. If you've registered and you have, you will receive a copy of the PowerPoint.
Do I get one?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
And for those of you who might have questions appear as you think of them later on this week, please